an hour. As just flashed across the screen, the meeting is being recorded. Though no voices other than the speakers will be identified as we're asking people to put their questions in the chat box, which we'll do at the end of the meeting. So let me formally begin. I did want to give a warm welcome to this BMRC webinar, Resilience and Refuge. My name is John Shields, and I'm a professor at Ryerson University, or if you prefer, X University. And I send greetings from the Building Migrant Resilience in Cities SSHRC Research Partnership, led by Valerie Preston at York University. Because this is a webinar and we're coming from many different locations, I did want to extend a broad land acknowledgement to the Indigenous nations and people who have and continue to occupy these lands we speak from, and who have nurtured and protected and continue to nurture and protect that land, act and live in a relationship of friendship and peace. I also wish to acknowledge, especially given recent events, the challenges we continue to confront with respect to racism, intolerance, and racially and ethnically motivated violence, and struggle. And so the struggle to achieve a truly inclusive and just society is ever more important. Now, we have a very full agenda today with 4 presentations, and each of the presentations is going to be allotted 12 minutes, and I'm going to try to be very strict with that time frame. And so I'll give everybody a 2-minute warning once you've done the 10 minutes, just so you have a heads up that it's coming to an end. And it's only at the end of the session that we will do an open Q&A session. So for those of you in the audience, if you could please use the chat box to ask your questions, and I'll try to collect them along the way and present them at the end. Now I'm going to introduce each of the speakers just very briefly, and I'm going to just introduce them as they're about to speak, just to save a bit of time. And the first actually set of speakers for the first talk is Nicole Ives, who's an associate professor in the School of Social Work at McGill University and co-founder of Indigenous Access at McGill, and Jill Hanley, who's a professor at the McGill School of Social Work and scientific director of Sherpa University Institute for Applied Research on Health, Immigration, and Diversity. And they're going to be presenting a paper today on faith-based organizations in support of refugee claims and community resilience in Montreal. So take it away.
Thank you very much, John. We are doing a classic last-minute switch of topics. I'm sorry we sent the information, but maybe not to all the places to get it across. But we are actually presenting on asylum seekers in Quebec and language issues, including their access to what we call in Quebec francisation, Francization. As an aspect that's really fundamental to people's settlement experience, their ability to be resilient and be welcomed. Language proficiency in an official language, and in Quebec, particularly French, is really fundamental to short-term and long-term settlement goals for asylum seekers. And being proficient in the official language is really critical to labor market integration, access to, in terms of using and information about health and social services, development of social capital, meaning friendships, connections for work, connections for education, for information, and just a sense of belonging and connection to the broader society. And it also can make a big difference in terms of people's sense of loneliness or isolation if they're not able to speak with other members of the community. So this is one of the things that's been really important to our project. So we're coming at this using the holistic integration model in order to analyze our data related to integration outcomes. And what's really important to us is integration is complex, and it's a pathway through social, subjective, and interactional integration that takes into account social identity, personal history, and socioeconomic context. So what's really important here is that individuals who migrate are only one piece of their ability to integrate, or their experiences integrating. There are critical structural factors that affect how much people can achieve, or what their options are when they come to Canada. So we're looking at it from both the individual point of view and the structural point of view. And we're drawing on data from a project that was multi-method. It was a project that involved several members of BMRC, so Nicole and I, but also Frédéric Dejean, who's presenting today, was a member of this project, Damaris Rose. And it was a Action Collective project that allowed us to receive funding for an independent project that was then taken up by the Ministry of Immigration and other provincial ministries to inform their policy. We've just submitted the report on Friday. It had multiple data sources, so secondary data, quantitative data from IRCC. MTRSS is the Quebec Ministry of Labor and Social Solidarity, so welfare, and the Immigration and Refugee Board. The core of it, and what we're going to talk about a lot today, was a structured questionnaire with 324 asylum seekers that you can see the criteria there. We were reaching out to people who came to Quebec between January 1st, 2017 and December 31st, 2018. The government was very interested in the uptick of people that were crossing irregularly, mostly at Roxham Road in Quebec. So this is tens of thousands of people, much more than in the recent past. And we had a multilingual team that was able to do these questionnaires in the 6 languages you see below. After the survey, we did interviews with 31 of the people. Oops, I have 31, and we also did focus groups that involved 49 community workers from different types of sectors. So very large. So I'm just going to bring these all up so we don't. So basically, in terms of our book chapter, we're going to present today some aspects of it. So a portrait of the sample in terms of their language skills and ability, the impacts of language that they're reporting on their settlement process, and then talk a little bit about the Quebec policies that shape francisation. So to begin with, it's interesting to see that at the arrival, or very soon after, we do have nearly 30% of people who speak French already, but another 40% who speak neither English or French, and 30% who speak only English or another language. So this is like at the crux of the concern in Quebec. If you're from outside Quebec, you might not be fully aware of all the politics that goes into this, but it's a very big political issue in Quebec that newcomers integrate into Francophone society. So we're not going to get into all the historical reasons for this great concern, but it's an important consideration in Quebec. And for the most part, Quebec has responded by making widely available French courses to newcomers. So you can see here that there are 70% of the asylum seekers who arrived in that time who did not speak French at all upon arrival. And so they would be important targets for francisation, although as asylum seekers, a little less so than permanent immigrants, because of the uncertainty about whether or not they're going to remain in Canada or Quebec. So in terms of their sense of proficiency, um, this includes people who would have taken some French courses after arriving. And you can see that many people consider themselves to be able to communicate at a basic or quite good level of French. So only 40% that still say after 3 or more months in Quebec that they have poor to no French capacity. And we can see that the people are reporting slightly better English capacity. And so only 24% of the people who responded said they had no capacity at all in English. So you can see that among the asylum seekers who came in that time period, that English was a stronger language in terms of their capacity. However, the language came out in our survey as one of the biggest challenges in their settlement process. So our community stakeholders were talking about how access to information when people first arrived, in terms of how does the housing market work? How do I access healthcare? How do I get my kids in school? What schools can my kids go to? This was all, it's a challenge already for people who speak some English, but people who don't speak either English or French really have a very difficult time getting access to this information. And it's an important role of the community stakeholders, the community settlement workers and community groups to help people who don't speak English or French, and even those who just speak English, to access information. We can see, however, that people show a lot of resilience in terms of getting access to information and services in the absence of strong French. So you see 31% were just saying they would do their best to communicate with like hand signals and using what words they knew. They would just try and make it work, drawing, stuff like that. Google Translate, people are turning increasingly to technology to help them communicate when they're face to face with someone, or if they're receiving written documents. We have 23% that are asking friends or family to translate. And only 12% were saying that they were able to communicate through an interpreter. So even though this is supposed to be widely available in the health and social service sector, for example, we see not a lot of people are able to actually benefit from this. Nicola, I'm losing track of how many slides I'm supposed to do now because I can't see the number of slides.
It's okay. It's okay. I can take over.
Okay.
Thank you. Our focus on language and specifically francisation, in terms of the findings, the francisation program is run by the Ministry of Immigration, Francisation and Integration. The acronym is MIFI, and it has two components. One is to cover the language skills that are used in various settings, whether it's vocational or technical, in addition to specific learning contexts, as well as the grammar elements, pronunciation, spelling. But it's designed to enable immigrants to fully participate in French civic and cultural life. So that covers the language. The second piece is that it introduces what the government of Quebec has termed sociocultural norms and shared democratic values. And so that's another piece that's very Quebec specific. So in addition to the language, there's a cultural piece regarding the shared democratic values, which is different from the other provinces and territories who have a more generic language program and cultural introduction program from IRCC. So what we found was that asylum seekers had access to full-time and part-time courses. There are no fees required. However, if they go part-time, there's no access to financial support in terms of participation in the courses and also childcare costs. So that means that if they need to work and then participate part-time in order to further their job prospects down the road, they are unable to do so.
2-minute warning.
Sorry, 2-minute warning. Okay. Next slide, Jill. So some obstacles to francisation. Let me just, so you could see that there was a majority of non-Francophone respondents who participated in the francisation courses. Although you had over a quarter who would have liked to have taken them but were unable to. And the reasons that they were unable to were related to the barriers below, such as lack of access to subsidized childcare, the need to be home to take care of children. Some parents worked around that by having one parent participate during the day in one session and then switching off. But other barriers where the schedule wasn't convenient, and that there might not be any places in their neighborhood. Next slide.
So in terms of discussion, I mean, one point is that asylum seekers are demonstrating an openness and willingness to learn French. There's a very high interest in taking the courses, and they're showing a lot of resilience in terms of learning a new language, communicating across barriers. We're raising a sort of current affairs concern, actually, that the Quebec government has proposed Bill 96, which suggests that newcomers to Quebec will no longer be able to communicate with the government in any language besides French once they've been in the province for 6 months, meaning after that, all communication with the government will have to be in French. However, we know, as we saw in what Nicole said, that there's many barriers to their participation in French courses, and there's a concern about using punitive, exclusionary incentives to learn French as opposed to more welcoming, inclusive ones.
Maybe just a few moments, just to
in summary, our recommendations are for the part-time francisation courses that those who are enrolled have the same types of benefits as those who are enrolled full-time. Also, to facilitate access to interpretation throughout the healthcare and social services network. That is a key piece to be able to access and trust service providers. Along with that is encouraging the hiring of multilingual staff, again, to build the trust in creating comfort for people to access services, and looking more holistically at integration to foster the resilience that asylum seekers have shown and encourage